They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So what I want to know is, what are the first words that pop into your head when you see this dude? Okay, because I got Dopey and Muppet. That's what I got. The saying that we have over here in New Zealand, and that is that this guy's face matches who he is so to a T. It's uncanny. To a T, baby. For it is that at this channel we call this type of DC the Dopey Muppet. Ladies and gentlemen, sub-I of all houses, through this episode I am going to show you why it is we call this DC the Dopey Muppet. We're going to take a trip back to 2006. That's when this DC was a chef at some restaurant in London. That's London, England, and that's overseas somewhere. Now, he at the time was trying to get this chick, obviously quite a paralytic one, at his work to sleep with him and had been putting on the charm. Now, old Dopey here, he had a goal, and that goal was to get this chick into his bed at his place and get it on. And how was he going to do this? Well, this is where this genius created his J4 plan. You see, old Dopey here, his birthday was coming up, and he thought that would be the night that he gets it on, that he was going to take her out, spend heaps of cash on her, get her drunk, obviously probably paralytic, and very, very low lighting, but he was going to get her drunk, and and then get her back to his place, into bed, and shag her. That's it's an English term and an Australian one. They use it for the sheep. Anyway, that was his plan, to get her into bed. Carrying on, right? The night before his birthday, old Dopey here left work and drove past the bank and grabbed a whole bunch of money for tomorrow's night's birthday. Then he got home and he jumped online and ordered a really big freezer, right? As you do. And then he went to bed. Now, a couple of hours later, old Dopey here, he awoke and got up, crept over to his wardrobe, took out a cast iron frying pan, one of those really big heavy ones, and a plastic bag. And then what he did was he went back to his bed, raised the iron frying pan above his head, and brought it down quite heavily upon the face of his slumbering wife. Yeah, he hit her a couple of times, which rendered her immediately into a comatose state, and then he took out his multi-purpose tool, the old plastic bag, and quickly put it over her head to not just stop the bleeding onto the bed, of which he wanted to use for tomorrow's night's magic, he also used it to suffocate her to death. And then what Dopey did was put her in a sleeping bag, then zipped it up, then put her in a tarp and wrapped her up, and then just waited for the freezer to be delivered. Then the next day, when it was, he put her in that, and then he put that in the back shed. Then old Dopey here, he went and celebrated his birthday. And you know what? He achieved his objective, And he got it on with a chick in his bed, in his house, that he had very, very recently shared with his wife. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. Think about what you would look like if you were someone that had that for the motive for murdering your wife. Like, what would you look like? You would look like this. That's the motive. That's the reason why this DC can take a sister away from her brother, a daughter away from her parents, a woman away from her father. Now, man, that's it. To take a chick to bed, he's willing to do all that damage. That's why this DC gets an episode on this channel. Now, this is our victim. Her name is Melanie. Melanie Vandermeer. She's a South African lass. Well, that's where she was from, but she moved over from South Africa, and she'd been in England for about 10 years, I think it was, before meeting our DC. Yeah, she met our Prince Charming because she worked at the same place as where he was being a chef, and that's how he seems to meet all of his girlfriends. Okay, so now back to Genius's plan here. He rung up her father now in South Africa and informed them that she had had like an aneurysm which brought on a heart attack and she passed away at their place. And the thing is, he actually managed to pull that off. That part of his plan, that actually worked. He actually flew over South Africa with an urn full of barbecue ashes and gave it to them. He even put his wedding ring in the urn and says, "Oh, we can be together forever," and did the old DC thing. And of course he got away with it, because who would have thought? How the hell would they know that they're standing in the presence of a Dopey Muppet DC? You know, it makes me think, the first time that her parents saw him, I wonder if they thought, oh, God damn, he's a Dopey Muppet looking character, isn't he? And it's like, oh dear, you know, like, she loves him, let's give him a chance, you know, he seems like a rather nice young man. And the thing is that you are 100% right for the first things you thought of when you saw him. 100%. He's the Dopey Muppet DC. So anyways, DC, he went back to England and lived in his house for about 3 years. Now, you might think that, hey, this J for Genius plan actually worked out, but you see, that J for Genius plan, it's still in play. Because you see, 3 years later, our DC still hasn't gotten rid of the victim, our victim, in the freezer. She's still in the freezer, still in the back shed. So in that 3 years, old Dopey here, he's shacked up with a chick, and she's been living in the house with him, with the victim, for the last 3 years. And now our Dopey Muppet and his chick, they want to move. They want to move to Malta, which is someplace overseas somewhere. So old DC, he went back to his plan. And what he did was, he put Melanie, that was in the sleeping bag, that was in the tarp, and he put her into a rubbish bin. And then he was going to have the garbage guys that collect the rubbish kind of like pick the bin up and stick her in the truck and then take her to the refuse site. I don't think that's a new one. I think it might have been a borrowed plan. I think that plan might have been number 4 by some other geniuses. But anyway, this genius thought he'd use it as well. So he did. He did just that. He put her in a bin, he put her outside to be collected, and then him and his paralytically drunk chick went to Malta. Genius. So the old bin boys, they come to collect rubbish, but when they get to old Muppet's bin, they thought, hey, wait a minute, this is a bit too heavy, eh? So the bin boys thought they'd leave it there and then go on to the next house. But before they did, one of those boys took a peek inside that bin, old Muppet's bin. And what did he see? He saw a foot. And our Dopey Muppet DC's J for Genius plan came undone. Like I said, genius. So the cops come and they get that bin and they get our victim. They put her into CSI and they figure it all out, you see. They figure it all out. And our Dopey Muppet DC, he had absolutely no idea, as usual, that the cops were onto him, that the cops had done all that. And so what the cops did, they knew they couldn't get old DC back out of Malta by himself. So they thought, oh, well, let's flush him out. So what they did was they put the crime, they put him and pictures of him and stuff all over the news. And they ran it all through Malta and stuff. And old DC, old Dopey Muppet here, he saw that news clip on TV in Malta and he thought, oh, damn it, plan 1 didn't work that well. You know what I need? I need another plan. And that's what Genius did. He made another plan, another J4 plan. You know what his plan is? His plan is he's going to ring the cops up and he's going to admit to it. You see, our DC, well, he's a genius because our DC, he's done a bit of research on the old law and he saw that if he pleaded guilty to manslaughter and maybe concealing of a body, then he could face up to, like only a year in prison. So old Genius here and his plan 2, all he had to do was come up with story number 1 and just make it sound believable. So, now that old Genius has his plan, he then put that plan into action and he called the old cops up. And this is what he had to say.
Hello? Hello there. What's your name, please?
Peter Warner.
Okay, and how can I help today, Peter?
Concerning the body that was found on Hamilton Avenue.
Shocked this morning when I heard about it. I might have dropped my coffee cup this morning when I saw it. Okay, where are you at the moment?
I lost my girlfriend in Malta.
Okay, stay with me 1 moment.
So he is coming to England. He's going to come over and see those English cops and he's going to confess to it all. Now let's get back to the investigation. Let's get back to the murder of young Melanie and let's look at what the CSI came up with on how Melanie was killed. Like why we know absolute how she was killed, and that comes from the science, our boys at CSI, and girls, and why we can say that this DC's face matches his brilliance, and that this J for Genius plan of his, which contains his story number 1, and why this DC is called the Dopey Muppet. You see, we know that Dopey here attacked Melanie while she was sleeping in their bed, and that they know this, even though they don't have the original mattress, which would have shown the blood from the iron frying pan being smashed into her face and all that horrible shit. And how did they know this? How did they know that she was attacked when she was asleep? Well, that's simple. You see, when they unwrapped her from that tarp and then they unzipped that sleeping bag, they found that Melanie was actually wearing a sleeping mask on her face. Like, she was actually wearing one all that time. You see, Dopey here, the Dopey Muppet, he didn't take the mask off straight after he killed her. He just shoved the bag over her head, and then from that point, put her in the sleeping bag, wrapped her up in the tarp, and then put her in the freezer. And then even when 3 years later, when he gets her out, he still doesn't look at her face. Like this Dopey Muppet left her sleeping mask on. It's just genius, But now, some would think, that a lawyer with half a brain, which is most of them, no offence to the ones that have full brains, I mean the other 98% who don't. So a lawyer would say that he put the mask on afterwards for any number of really stupid reasons, and therefore the eye mask is of no evidentiary value. But you see, and there's usually a but, here's the slight problem with that as an innocent explanation. CSI and the Brits have pretty good ones, and they figured out that she was wearing the eye mask at the time when Dopey Muppet killed her because the eye mask had damage on it that matched both the cast iron frying pan and the injury to her face. And that's how they know, that's how we know that at the time she was attacked, Melanie was sleeping and was brutally murdered by Dopey. So that's what the cops know, and that Dopey doesn't. And now all they have to do is to see what Dopey has to say, and so do we. So now let's go listen to our DC, the Dopey Muppet, slowly but surely hang himself with his story number 1. Genius plan number 2.
This interview has been tape recorded. The date is Thursday, the 11th of June 2009.
Anyways, this guy's a German, so it's pretty out of it listening to someone with an accent from Germany.
It was one of these little arguments that started with...
Anyways, just remember, we're about to hear his story 1, but we know that she was sleeping, or at least lying down, in bed when he smashed her with the frying pan. And we know that, and we know that he doesn't know that we know that, and that's genius. Anyways, let's listen to him.
Me being a bum and not cleaning up after myself, and then snagging the remote and not giving it back. Because it was really in my face, pointing her finger, and you can't do this, and I just sort of pushed her away, and was done arguing, and don't you fucking walk away, and then I got clipped on the shoulder with the rolling pin. So if I got it, I'll use you. I got it right here, but not particularly, not hard, and it didn't break any bones or something. But I did turn around like, what the?
Oh, so she wasn't in bed sleeping at the time, DC. Oh, we've got it all wrong, mate. Anyway, do carry on.
I can only remember looking down, having 3 holes in my jeans, with sort of a bit of blood coming down, and her standing there with a knife in her hand going, see, I'm not afraid of you. I even spoke about being afraid of someone. What are you on about? My flat-out reaction was to punch her in the face.
Okay.
And it was fair and square. And I'm not talking, a hold back or something. It's talking a punch you in the face because you just stabbed me.
So this punch you talk about then, was that an instant reaction to being stabbed in the leg?
Instant.
I think it's pretty cool when you see a manipulator in action, because he's someone that is able to create stories that sound believable, because he sounds believable. And we know, like for a fact, that she had the eye mask on, she was lying down. So all of this is bullshit, but it's believable bullshit. And what's even better is the cop plays along. The cop knows he's bullshitting, but he plays along, because that makes DC think that he's getting away with it. Like, oh yeah, the cops believe me. Oh, genius. And now an old dopey DC story one. Now he talks about the frying pan. Now he talks about the weapon that he used in the end that killed her on that manslaughter charge, which he's going to plead guilty to. So now let's listen to his confession. If he can swing it in a way where he can get off on manslaughter.
One of those big cast iron Le Creuset griddle pans. They're proper heavy. If you're smaller, I don't know, if you're smaller apprentice as a girl, you can hardly pick them up on the handle. And then all of a sudden, that got into play and sort of flew past my shoulder again, and it just went on from there and holding down, and I basically got that from her in the end, and took that and basically hit her with it.
And there you go, story one. That's the plea to manslaughter, because can't be a murder if it happened at the heat of passion.
It was, I think, bang, 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 fall over, and oh my god, what just happened?
What state's she in after having hit her 3 times?
That was it.
What do you mean that's it?
That was it. Quiet, and there was nothing. There was no movement in any shape or form. It was quiet with blood everywhere.
Oh, poor Dopey's completely forgot to tell the cops about the plastic bag and how he put it over her head after he smashed her with that frying pan and then suffocated our poor Melanie to death. Oh, DC, you're such a pathetic person.
I really didn't know what to do. I don't know where to go from there.
And now we come to the time where you have to make a decision. Yes, you. You have to make a decision on whether or not you want to watch the second episode of the Dopey Muppet, because it's out now for members only, and it's only $4.99 New Zealand. It's only a couple of bucks. It's kind of like shouting me a cup of coffee. Unless, of course, you can wait a few days, and then you can just watch it for free. But to all those members of mine, you lucky devils, you, enjoy. To every non-member, stay safe. Stay safe, all of you. And I'll see you guys in a few days. Stay safe. Especially my DC subbies. Stay safe.